Tonight, we travel to a place so wild, so chaotic, and so gloriously unsupervised that it makes a modern music festival look like a quiet church picnic. We are sailing to the other side of the world, to Colonial, Australia in the 1800s, a land where rum was currency. The soldiers were drunker than the prisoners, and the nearest functioning legal system was roughly 12,000 miles away, and frankly not all that interested in helping you out. Picture it. You have just woken up in 1830-something on the ragged edge of the known world. You have no shoes, a horizon in every direction that quietly whispers good luck, and the growing suspicion that nobody here is coming to save you. Let us start at the very beginning, with the master criminal act that earned you a one-way ticket to the bottom of the globe. You are probably imagining something dramatic. A daring heist, a jewel at dawn, a stolen crown glittering in your pocket. The reality is far less glamorous. Most people sent to Australia were transported for petty theft, the kind of crime that today would get you a stern look and a small fine. You stole a handkerchief. You took some cheese. You borrowed a coat that technically belonged to someone else. Back in Britain, the courts were overflowing. The prisons were bursting, and someone had the genius idea to simply ship the problem somewhere far enough away that nobody would have to think about it again. That somewhere was you. By the early 1800s, there were over 200 offenses in Britain that could technically get you hanged. Stealing goods worth more than a few shillings, poaching a rabbit, cutting down a tree that was not yours. The law was so eager to execute people for so little that judges and juries actually started softening sentences just to avoid hanging someone over a stolen spoon. And that softer option, the merciful one, was transportation. 7 years if you were lucky, 14 if you were not, and for some unfortunate souls, the rest of your natural life. So, you have been sentenced. Now comes the part nobody warned you about. The trip. This is not a relaxing ocean cruise with a buffet and a man playing the violin. This is 8 months crammed into the damp wooden belly of a convict ship, chained below deck with several hundred strangers who are all just as confused, seasick, and resentful as you are. The air is thick enough to chew. The food is questionable on a good day and biological warfare on a bad one. Picture your accommodation, a generous word for the section of the ship known as the convict deck, a low wooden space with barely enough headroom to sit upright, divided into rows of cramped berths where you and your fellow prisoners are stacked like cargo. Because to the people running this operation, that is exactly what you are. When the weather turns rough, the gratings are sealed entirely, trapping you below in the dark with the smell, the noise, and the rising panic of hundreds of people who cannot get out, and the smell. Imagine the worst public bathroom you have ever encountered. Then remove the ventilation. Add the contents of several hundred seasick stomachs. Sprinkle in unwashed bodies and seal it in a wooden box for the better part of a year. Scurvy stalks the deck because fresh fruit is a fantasy out here. turning gums spongy and old wounds fresh again. Dysentery sweeps through with horrifying ease. Some voyages lost a handful of people. The truly notorious ones lost a quarter of everyone aboard. Their bodies slipped quietly over the side with little ceremony and even less mourning. And then, finally, impossibly, a smudge of land appears on the horizon. Relief floods through you, sweet and warm. You have survived the voyage. Unfortunately, nobody has told you yet what is actually waiting on that shore. You stagger off the ship, blinking like a mole that took a wrong turn, expecting at the very least a building or two. Instead, you are greeted by what can only be described as a work in progress. The colony is a scattering of tents, mud, and panic, clinging to the edge of a continent that clearly did not ask for visitors. There are no shops, no roads worth the name, and no comforting sense that anyone in charge has a plan. Now that you have arrived, it is time to discover your exciting new career, which is best summarized as whatever needs doing immediately forever. There is no application process, no interview, and absolutely no salary. As a convict, your labor belongs to the colony. You are clearing land, hauling timber, breaking rocks, and building the very settlement that is holding you prisoner. The hours are sunrise to sunset. The tools are basic. And the supervision ranges from indifferent to actively hostile. The genuinely maddening part is the complete absence of anything you would recognize as rights. You cannot quit. You cannot negotiate. You cannot point out that the workload is impossible or the treatment unfair, because there is no one to point it out to. Who cares? Your time is not your own. Your effort is not rewarded. And the fruits of all that labor flow upward to people who will never so much as learn your name. And here's the thing about a system that owns your body and resents your existence. The moment you slow down, talk back, or are simply accused of either, that system has a very particular way of responding. Break a rule, real or imagined, and the punishment is often the lash, delivered in public. So everyone gets the message at once. The instrument was the cat-o'-nine tails, a whip with multiple knotted cords designed to do as much damage as possible with each stroke. It earned its name honestly because it tore at the skin like claws. The condemned man was tied to a wooden frame, arms stretched up and bound so he could not move, his back bare to the sun and to the crowd. Then the counting began, slowly, deliberately, so everyone present understood exactly how long this was going to take. 25 lashes was considered a light penalty. 50 was serious. 100 or more was the kind of punishment that could break a man or kill him outright. But fear is an expensive currency in the long run, and the colony had already discovered a far more popular one. It was not coin, and it was certainly not justice. It was bottled, it was potent, and it ran the entire settlement from the inside out. In early colonial Australia, the most trusted currency was not gold, not silver, and not official coins. It was rum. Workers were paid in it. Debts were settled with it. Entire deals collapsed or succeeded based on how much of it changed hands. Imagine trying to run a town where the standard unit of value is also a substance that makes everyone progressively worse at running a town. Naturally, whoever controlled the supply of rum controlled the colony, and the people best positioned to do that were the officers of the military corps stationed there. They had the connections, the ships, and the nerve to buy up incoming cargoes of liquor and resell them at outrageous markups. They grew rich and powerful not by defending the colony, which was supposed to be their actual job, but by quietly becoming its liquor barons. Sooner or later, someone with actual authority was going to arrive, take one look at this drunken little empire, and decide to shut it down. And when that someone finally tried it, the colony responded not with reform, but with the only armed uprising in the nation's history. That governor was William Bligh, a man already famous for inspiring one mutiny at sea, and apparently keen to collect the full set. When he tried to crack down on the rum trade, the local military corps simply marched on his residence and arrested him. There was no foreign enemy, no grand because, just a group of officers deciding the governor was bad for business, and removing him like a manager. Nobody liked the colony. For a while, was run by the very people it should have been guarding against. So, there it is. A single long day at the bottom of the world. You arrived in chains for stealing something small, survived a voyage that smelled like the inside of a forgotten barrel, and washed up in a colony held together by mud, rum, and sheer stubbornness. You labored under the lash, watched the soldiers stage a rebellion over liquor, and learned that the nearest law worth the name was an ocean away. It was harsh, it was chaotic, and somehow against every sensible expectation. It was also the strange beginning of a home. It is easy to laugh at how absurd it all was. The punch coins, the secret slang, the constables who were themselves convicts, but underneath the absurdity sits something quietly remarkable. The people who lived through this were the discarded and the unwanted, the poor and the desperate, and out of almost nothing, they endured. They built shelter from bark, fed themselves from stubborn soil, and kept going in a place that seemed designed to be rid of them. That is not a punchline. That is resilience, raw and unglamorous and real. History is gross and ridiculous and occasionally heartbreaking, but it is also proof that people are stubborn and hopeful and impossibly tough.